So now we move into the part of the story where science rolls up its sleeves and goes headfirst into this entire thing to figure it out properly, whatever properly might be, right? So scholars and
Mm-hmm.
researchers have been trying to prove or disprove the authenticity of the shroud using scientific methods since the late 19th century, right? Nobody's surprised about this. And one of the first genuinely interesting observations came in 1898 when someone noticed that the images on the shroud, these faint sepia toned impressions, behave more like photographic negatives than positives. So, just in case this gets a bit confusing, so the outlines of the person lying in the shroud, those were not inherently or evidently visible beforehand. All of them were done after the very first evidence that there could be someone inside who is probably Jesus Christ took place in 1898. And this is a very, very, very interesting point here. I want to take a very slight tangent on this point. The photographer that took the very first recorded photo of the shroud was an Italian
Mm-hmm.
lawyer and amateur photographer called Secondo Pia. His claim to fame was this
Okay.
photo of the Shroud of Turin that looked like a photographic negative. Nowadays, we have a photo effect in his name. Would either one of you care to hazard a guess? The clue is in the
No.
Can
name.
you can you repeat that exactly? Can you repeat the name?
Secondo Pia,
Sepia.
sepia. That is
Hmm.
where, and I'm sure both of you know what sepia effect is, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sepia is basically secondopia, short form for
Oh,
secondopia.
nice.
And once I came across this, it was so fucking interesting to me. Like, I have to tell you guys about this. Like, this is how the sepia effect came into public general knowledge because
Hmm.
of this guy called Secondo Pia who took the very first recorded photo of the Shroud of Turin. That was basically his foray
Hmm.
into the world of photography, right? Now, I'll show you the creepy ass photo that this guy took. Can
Everything about this is so creepy, and still people think it is not creepy.
you see this?
Oh
Yes.
shit.
Can you see this outline of what seems to be like a person, a bearded, long haired person? This,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
so when he took the actual photo, nothing showed up, obviously. And
Hmm.
then when he started, for lack of a better word, the sepia effect came into effect, this thing popped up, almost like in the negative aspect of
Hmm.
that. And this is actually the original photo that this guy took in Turin in
Nice.
1898.
The weird thing is that you can actually see the mustache and the teeth.
Yeah,
How can it be so clear?
It seems so much like the Jesus on a bread sort of a
yeah,
this thing
yeah,
to
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Like
yes.
you can see anything if you really
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
pseudoscience psychology, this thing, that if you really put your mind to it, you can see a lot of things on random objects.
And
Yeah.
how is the face so perfectly rectangular?
Yeah.
Going back to the photo, to be very honest, it was not Pia's fault that this thing cropped up. He just took a
Yeah.
fucking photo and developed the negative,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
Yeah.
yeah,
understandably, around that time, anything which was not easily comprehensible or something strange had happened, he was ostracized from society. People called him a
yeah. Oh
sorcerer, and
no.
all of that shit happened. And then, basically, I think, if I'm not mistaken, sometime in the 1930s or 40s, there was some other guy who also took the photo, and his photos also basically showed up the same thing. That's
Mm-hmm.
when
Can I
he was
say
sort
it's
of,
so funny? It is so funny for a lawyer to be ostracized for photography, because lawyer's profession has enough things to be ostracized for. Like,
yes, but
you're
like
a
people,
lawyer.
since time immemorial, people have taken religion extremely seriously. Like, that is
Yeah,
one
no
of the
Yeah.
shit.
religion is one of the basic cornerstones upon which literally wars have been fought. So,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, ostracizing someone is extremely believable. I mean, that's the easiest route they could take. They didn't lynch him to death, so
Yeah.
it is what it is. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I mentioned the photograph in the first place because it is a very weird thing for something that supposedly existed centuries before photography, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that point on, things get increasingly experimental. Starting in the 1970s, scientists began running a series of tests to figure out how the image was actually formed. They looked into whether it could have been painted, whether pigments were used, whether it was created using heat or scorching of some kind, or any other method
Mm-hmm.
that would make sense within known scientific processes, right? Because as far as science is concerned, back in the age of Christ, there was no known scientific method to ensure that this imprint is left on this fucking piece of cloth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you could conceivably do that in the 21st century. There are like a million ways you could do this.
Mm-hmm.
But in the age of Christ, I'm a bit skeptical about that. Like there weren't,
Yeah.
enough technological advancements made around that time, right?
Yeah.
And to no one's surprise, the results of all these tests were not very helpful because none of them
Of
were very
course.
conclusive, right? Nothing definitively proved that it was painted. Nothing clearly showed it was burned or chemically treated in a way we understand, which basically means that science showed up, ran a bunch of experiments, and then reached the conclusion that it couldn't definitively prove it one way or the other, right? Now, in 1988, things got a lot more decisive. The Vatican, of all people, the Vatican allowed three laboratories in three different countries across the world to conduct
Mm-hmm.
carbon 14 dating on small samples of the shroud. Do you guys know what carbon dating is? Like
Yeah,
you
you
must
determine
Yeah,
you
the
yeah, yeah.
age.
must have studied in science in 8th, 9th, 10th class science. It's basically, for
Yeah.
those who don't know, carbon dating is done to find out the age of
Mm-hmm.
historical pieces, basically, right? They literally cut out postage stamp sized pieces of the linen and sent them across to these laboratories across the world. And this was supposed to be the big moment, the final answer to prove it one way or the other. All three labs independently concluded that the cloth dated back to somewhere between 1260 and 1390, which, if you remember your timelines correctly, places it firmly in the medieval period and not first century Jerusalem. Okay, that's one
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah.
So at this point, it looked like the mystery had finally been solved. The shroud was
Mm-hmm.
likely a medieval creation. Case closed, right? Wrong.
Sure.
Except,
I knew it. Knew it.
again, the case was not closed. Almost
Mm-hmm.
immediately, some scientists began questioning the methodology. There were concerns about whether the samples used were representative of the entire cloth, whether repairs or contamination could have affected the results, and whether the testing conditions were entirely reliable. All of this is to say that the one term that we keep on using time and time again, scientific consensus was not reached on this, whatever the outcome
Mm-hmm.
of these tests were, right? And for anyone who gives even an iota of damn about science in general, it's that scientific consensus is extremely, extremely important for anything to be established as a fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair to the Vatican in this very specific case, it didn't immediately declare victory or defeat. Instead, surprisingly so, might I mention, it encouraged further research and investigations into the matter, while also suggesting that people continue to venerate the shroud as an inspiring image of the Christ. And
Why is it
import
surprising? It is like, because this was not first century Jerusalem, it it was actually better for the Victorian for the church to look further into this, right? That to establish that this was actually Jesus' shroud.
I agree. But also at the same time, if we know anything about religious conservatism in general, it is that the first guy that comes across that says this thing is sus They will take that guy for their word, right? Instead of saying, okay, maybe let's take a step back and test again. You know where I'm coming from?
Only if it is in their favor. If it is not in their favor, they will be like, this is not, this is
Probably yes.
let's
Probably yes. Yeah. You're
and
probably not
that's not
wrong.
true to religion. That's true to all of us. Like
Yeah.
that's how all of us function.
And most importantly, the Holy See. The C is SEE. In case you don't know, the Holy See is what the government of the Roman Catholic Church is referred to as. They're referred to as the
Oh,
Holy
really?
See. Yeah. So the Holy See has never to date made an official statement confirming or denying its authenticity. And we are in 2026 right now. Okay. Till now, not a single statement has been made one way or the other. They just like, eh. So whatever the popes did back in the 14th century is still continuing into the 22nd century, even 21st century, sorry. Right? So even after what was supposed to be the most definitive test, we are still not quite there. And then,
Mm-hmm.
just when you think the story has settled into a steady state of uncertainty, something new comes along, as is the case with anything scientific, right? Now, fast forward to 2022. In 22, researchers in Italy conducted yet another study, this time using a technique called wide angle X-ray scattering, or WAXS for short, to analyze the structure of the linen. Now, instead of dating the cloth directly, this method looks at how the material has degraded over time. And what they found was that the structural condition of the shroud's linen was fully compatible with another linen sample that, based on historical records, dates back to somewhere between 55 and 74 CE, which, if accurate, places it right around the time of Christ. Right?
Yeah.
So there are
Right.
also within science, there are two different schools of thought here, like different testing laboratories carried out, different scientific processes were involved, and both of them came back with widely differing results. The researchers suggested that environmental carbon contamination could explain why the earlier carbon dating tests pointed to a medieval origin. In other words, the 1988 results might have been skewed. Now, to be clear, this 2022 study does not prove that the shroud is authentic. We are not claiming that for a
Mm-hmm.
single second. The fucking church doesn't claim that to be true for a single second. So we are nobody's compared to that. The researchers themselves did not make that claim. What it does do is strengthen the possibility that the cloth could be much older than previously thought. That is the only sort of thing that conclusion that has been reached. That there is a
Mm-hmm.
possibility that it could be older than the medieval ages as it was claimed to be in the previous study. And very importantly, they also noted that further testing is needed to confirm these findings, right? So where does all of this leave us? Exactly where the story seems to love being, right in the middle of uncertainty across the board.